Welcome to Wireless and IoT Security. In this chapter, we talk about advanced WLAN security measures. In chapter 7, we took the basic security measures. This chapter covers a comprehensive security policy for large-scale networks, authentication access control, data protection in the enterprise, user segmentation, managing network and user devices. So how do we establish and enforce a comprehensive security policy? At a minimum, these 6 categories need to be thought about. Number 1, centralized versus distributed design and management. How do we deal with remote access? How do we deal with guests? How do we deal with quarantining devices? How are we going to consider the compliances? And also, very importantly, the employee training and education. You may have to decide which design and management is better, a centralized architecture or distributed. In a distributed architecture, each access point is configured separately. They work with other network devices to ensure end-to-end secure service. As an example, you may have the APs provide encryption and the radius server provides authentication. A centralized architecture, it uses authentication, encryption, and access control servers to administer and manage security. It deploys thin access points and one or more centralized controllers. And the advantage is it simplifies design and control. Also, it can save maintenance time. Now, what is a remote access policy? It ensures a uniform, centralized authentication system through the network. Consider whether to permit resource-intensive apps such as VoIP or voice over WLAN. It also ensures that telecommunicators and traveling employees can connect through secure virtual private network connections. So, what about guests? Now, there are no right policies for guest access, but a policy should be clearly stated and understood. This is one option. Establish rules for visitor on the authentication and policy control. Allow genuine visitors and guests to access the internet and maybe some intranet services. You need to restrict them from corporate local area network. Some organizations do not offer Wi-Fi access to guests because many people use mobile connected devices. The process of isolating a device from the network until there is some level of assurance a device is both authorized and to connect and free from malware is quarantining. Now, you may have 2 different types. A walled garden. It restricts internal access for the suspect device, allow access to instructions and services to remediate the outstanding compliance issues. It may allow external access to the internet. You may have captive portal. An HTTP session is forced to a landing page prior to gaining access to the internet. So this is like Starbucks with their landing page or any other coffee shop. You need to think about compliance consideration. Data privacy regulations are externally driven. Requirements are by definitions for software organization. Regulations specify best practices that many organizations would adhere to anyway. An internal policy or implementation of a security solution or process may be more effective than a required policy solution. Okay. We also need to think about employee training and education. Awareness training should cover the risk of wireless security. It protects the employees and the organization for cyber criminals. When we talk about implementing authentication access control, you have the EAP, you also have radius service, you have intrusion IDS systems, IPS systems, the protocol filtering, and you have the authenticated dynamic host control protocol, or ADCHCP. The externally authenticated protocol is a method of encapsulation used to securely transport key material for encryption over wireless and TCP networks. Also used over LANs between authenticator and the authentication server, and is referred to as EPOL. It is a generic authentication mechanism that transports authentication requests, challenges, notification, and so on across the network. It creates a secure tunnel using TLS. Credentials are passed through the secure tunnel to authentication server. It is closely related with the radius. Radius, or remote authentication dialing user service, is a network protocol that provides authentication, authorization, and accounting services for devices or users on the network. How does it work? When a client attempts to connect to a network, a device or user is challenged by a network access server device with a request for some type of credential. The NAS passes the user credential to the radius server. If the credentials are verified, for example, if the username is found and the password is correct, the radius server returns an access accept response. The response also specifies user access attribute. So here's how it works. One, the client sends a credential via EPOL. It goes to the authenticator. The client is authenticated via radius, which the authentication sends that back to the network. Once the client is validated, access to the network is given. This process shown here outlines the request, challenge, and response for both EAP and radius. So you are the client. It sends an association request to the authenticator. It sends back associated response. Then the EPOL goes both ways. The authenticator sends the EAP request identifier. Supplicant sends a response identifier, which generates a radius access request to authentication server. TLS channel is formed between the supplicant, authenticator, and the authenticator server. A radius access challenge is requested by the authentication server. The authenticator also sends a EAP request credentials. The EAP response credentials is sent from the supplicant to the authenticator, and a radius access request is sent to the authenticator server. A TLS tunnel is created again, and you either fail or the connection or pass the connection request. Here you have the IPS IDS systems. It uses a deep packet inspection to look inside packets going through the network. If it's the IDS, it is a detection system. It raises a flag. It will detect suspicious activity on the wire or over the air. In the IPS, it actively confronts and blocks suspicious traffic, uses non-signature of existing threats to identify attacks. A wireless IDS or IPS is commonly referred to as a WIP. And you have two tabs. You have a network-based scripts and a host-based. When we talk about protocol filtering, if we either tab protocol filtering, it uses a protocol identifier to identify the protocol that is to be blocked. You also have IP protocol filtering. It can be configured on the access point by specifying the well-known port number for the specific protocol. It blocks specific IP protocols. You also have our DHCP protocol. You have two different methods. You have a captive porter method or a 802.1x port control method. In a captive porter method, a user joining a network for the first time issues an IP address for the captive client and portal. The captive portal challenges user for the username and password. If it's a 802.1x port control method, 802.1x protocol shuts down all traffic coming out of the logical port connecting the user's device with the wireless network except for the ePort encapsulation authentication messages. When the radius server authenticates the user service, the 802.1x protocol opens a logical port to allow unrestricted flow of traffic. When we talk about data protection, you have WP2 personal enterprise modes, you have WPA3, the IP security, VPNs, and you also have application security. You have a user segmentation, you have internal user segmentation, external user segmentation. The internal user segmentation is often accomplished via VLANs. If it's external, you have options. You have a wireless connection outside the corporate firewall that allows direct access to the public internet, a VLAN that provides direct access to the internet. If you're using VLANs, it's a way to isolate visitor traffic and confine to an external untrusted areas. A layer 2 technique whereby a network designed logically segregates traffic assigned to a specific VLAN using some identifier. It uses ACLs or access control list. All packets coming from a client is assigned to a VLAN tagged with VLAN number called 802.1q tagging or VLAN tagging. Scalable in large network because VLAN association spans physical switches. The client authenticates via radius. We also have guest access and password. It is open access. Guest access is available to anyone who can receive the wireless signal. You may have a common secure guest password. This is a very low security because visitors share the well-known password for user authentication. You also have a provisioned guest access. Each guest is a given, unique, and limited password. You can also place visitors on their DMCs. It enables internet users to access corporate public services such as web service and external email and domain name system servers. Visitors can connect to access point located in the DMC subnet, then connect to the company website or internet while blocked from the internal corporate LAN. Depending on the firewall architecture, another method is to place visitor Wi-Fi network on its own Wi-Fi DMC subnet. How do we manage network and user devices? You can use the SNP version 3, discovery protocols, IP services, coverage area and Wi-Fi roaming, client security outside perimeter, device management user logos, hard drive encryption, untying, and Wi-Fi as a service. So what is SNP version 3? Is the application layer protocol used to provide a message format for exchanging information to your network management system. or NMS, and a host agent. Access point support SNP alerts. When agent message information base or MIB is installed and enabled, MIB will be able to say information about a network started back to an NMS. So in a SNP protocol, you have message integrity. SNP version 3 uses a hash code to ensure packets have not been tampered with. It provides authentication. SNP determines the message coming by the device. It also provides encryption by scrambling the message to hide from a possible device stopper. You got discovery protocols, which are essential for wireless networks to work efficiently, especially in a lightweight access point or control implementation where the WLAN is a design consideration. Can be problematic with regard to security. Information that is useful to an administrator is also useful to unauthorized intruder. You have two discovery protocols, either Cisco discovery protocol or link layer discovery protocol. It is enabled on layer 2 networks. You could have IP services such as DHCP server, SSL certificate management service, network time protocol, RQ service, and VPN. You also have coverage area and Wi-Fi roaming, with like 4 options. Seamless roaming. It overlaps in the coverage areas. Designer specifies overlapping access control point, coverage of at least 15-25%. You have nomadic roaming, which user's connection is lost and then reestablished when crossing access point boundaries. You also have collocation, a fully overlapping access point used to increase capacity. You may have a mesh service. Access point acts as bridge trunks that link with other mesh node access points to backhaul traffic in a network to distribution medium product gateway. It's common in design larger networks where areas inaccessible to wired connectivity. You may have a client circuit outside perimeter. The legacy design was a M&M network security, or perimeter defense, internet defense. Like the M&M candies are crunchy on the outside, chewy on the middle. This approach was problematic, need to protect from an internal threat as well as external issues, antivirus, IPS, content URL filters, web proxies, application and web firewalls. Today, we use security policy address issues and compliances. We also use MDM and MAM services. We also have device manager user logons. So the identify and access management IAM can be problematic in large environment. Solution is single sign-on. Users enter the credential one time to gain access to all network services and location to which they are authorized to connect. From a security standpoint, SSO requires high security standards. It also needs user education and strong password requirements. You could have hard drive encryption, encrypts all contents of the hard disk, protects mobile devices that lost or stolen. So you may have alternatives. You have such a master access password on the device, but if the users forget the password on hardware encrypted devices, encryption is reversible and can access files. You can also store files on a protected remote server, but it is also open to the CryptoLocker scam. Which is a malware that encrypts file. It's actually a ransomware. Because quantity protocols quarantine non-compliant devices and limit their access to the network. It's a form of network access control that allows some level of access, typically guest access, if certain parameters are not met. The antivirus patches. By setting device profiles, an administrator can ensure that each device must match a minimum set of criteria. You may also have a Wi-Fi as a service, which comes from you either give hardware as a service, software as a service, management as a service. In a hardware service, you provide the supplies, configures, and deploy all wireless assets. If it's software as a service, you provide the supplies of software and tools and update the firmware and security patches. If it's management as a service, provider remotely manages and supports the network from their cloud-based network operations center or NOC. In this chapter, we looked at managing network and user devices, user segmentation, data protection in the enterprise, authentication and access control, comprehensive security policy for large-scale networks.